Okay, so let's continue on and just kind of start expanding this example. And so what I want to show you today is how to add a axes edit box and plot button. And so the goal is going to be is I want to use this slider and gauge as the amplitude of this sine wave. And then I want to pull the frequency from this edit box. And then once I've done all that, basically when I push this plot button, I want to grab all that information, and then I want to use these equations to plot this sine wave here. So let's go ahead and do that. Pull it up, and I'm going to save this now as, well, I'm going to make sure it's saved as video 1, and I'm going to save this as video 2. This is a new app. It doesn't matter. I'm just building on it, but I want to have every step along the way. And so I'm going to go in, and I'm going to grab all these other objects that I need. I know I'm going to need an edit field numeric down here. I know I'm going to need this state button, and I think I passed over the first one is the axes object. And so now I don't want this title anymore, and I'm going to go ahead and actually just go ahead and change my axes directly. So if you remember before, what we used to do is we used to just do it in the MATLAB script. What I can do instead is I can just use the GUI to do this. So if I click on my axes object here and go to the inspector, if you've noticed, it doesn't have any callback properties, which is kind of significant. That means that when I go to look for callbacks, what can I plot with, right? I can't use a callback for the axes object. So I'm going to the inspector, and I'm going to delete this title string. I don't want a title. I want my X label string to be time in seconds, and I want my Y label string to be amplitude in millimeters. That was that's kind of what was shown in the PowerPoint. And so now I've set up all of my components for this app. If I were to go to run this, it's not going to do anything, though, because I haven't connected everything. The only thing that it will do is what I did in the previous video, which is connect the slider bar to the gauge. So if I start to scroll through this, right, it'll change it. And that was with the value changing callback, remember? So that I could have done it so if I dragged and dropped it, then it would change. But I went with the one that changes as I move this slider bar. And so now I need to set it up so that when I press this button here, it'll actually plot something. So let's go look at this button. What I want to do is I want to change this button text to be plot in all caps. And now I can look, there are callbacks. I could go in and add a plot changed function, a value changed function. First, let me just go and edit the text of this edit field. I'm going to have it say frequency in radians per second. And that's just so I don't forget later. And I know I just kind of went out of order a little bit, but I want to change it now so I don't forget. I can space things out a little bit. So now I want to change, when I click this plot button, I want it to do something. So I'm going to add a callback. And remember, this is value changed function. In this case, that value that's changed is I've clicked my button, which basically means it's on or off. So when that changes, I want to plot. I want to do something. And so let me add a callback. I already did this one on accident earlier, so I'm going to go click the plot button value changed callback, and let's go to it. And so there's nothing in there. And so what I need to do is I need to go in and I need to connect, I need to pull all the data from everything else and set them equal to a few things. So I want omega to be connected to my frequency text box. I want to calculate the period using that. So let's do that first. Let's go pull omega. So we'll say omega is equal to, and I need to pull it from that app. And so if you look here, I can go grab this app.frequency radians per second edit field. And that's where I want to pull the value from to set it equal to omega. And so I'll do app.frequency, and if you look at it, autofills for me, .value. And so what that is going to do is it's going to pull the number that I type into that box and set it equal to omega. So now I have my frequency. Now I can calculate the time period of my sine wave is going to be t is equal to 2 times pi over omega. Now I need to grab my amplitude. And remember, I'm going to grab the amplitude either from the gauge or the slider, because that is, if I go here, this is a display for my amplitude, which I'm changing with the slider. And that's going to go into this equation here. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's grab the slider value. Why not? That's going to be my control variable, basically. So let's grab that. So I want to set the amplitude, equal to app.slider.value. This is the object for the slider component, basically holding all the data for the slider component. And I want to pull the value, basically class out of that, whatever that is, which in this case would be the value of the slider, basically where it's stopping, the value that you stopped on, and that's going to be equal to a. And so now I'm going to use this little a is going to be equal to a times sine of omega times t. And so now I need to create t, and that's why I defined this time period, because I just want t to go between, I'm going to use linspace. So I want it to go between 0 and 2t, so 2 times the period. And I want it to have 1,000 points so that I can plot with it. And so this is going to create time based on the period that I calculated. And so just to repeat, everything that I'm doing so far is I'm grabbing the omega from the edit box. I'm grabbing the frequency from the edit box. I'm grabbing the amplitude from the slider value. I'm calculating the time period, the time vector that I'm going to use to plot, and then calculating the amplitude, the actual value of the sine function that I want to plot. And now let's actually go and plot it. So I'm going to use my normal object, my h variable, and I'm going to do plot. And so here is where it's going to get a little trickier. Normally I would just go plot t, comma, a, right? And that would be, I want to plot my time and my amplitude. My time on my x-axis, amplitude on my y-axis. But that's not quite done. And so you can see there's a little warning over here. If I click on it, I need to give a handle as the first argument. And the reason it's telling me that is because I haven't told it where to plot. Because when I run this app, I need to plot it somewhere in the app, right? And the app is just all of these components. It's not going to pull up a figure window and plot it. It needs to plot somewhere in the app, in the GUI I'm creating. And so that's somewhere that I gave it a place is going to be this axes object, and that is app.UIAxes. And so now I need to give it, if I go into the plot function, the first input that you can put into a plot function is to give the handle or the location that you want to plot this. And so in this case, I'm going to do app.UIAxes. And so what this plot function is now telling it is inside of the app.UIAxes, plot t on the x-axis, a on the y-axis. And in the GUI, you have to give it that. And so this is connecting all of this data to this axes object that I created. And so let's go and plot it and see how it looks, see if it works. And so I'm going to bring this up to 40, which means my maximum amplitude should be around 40, probably 40.5 or something. And I'm just going to have my frequency be 3.14, so basically pi. And there, it's plotted everything. And so now what I can do is I can kind of edit this plot a little bit. I could make the lines thicker, but all I'm really going to do is I'm going to mess with the axis. And so I just want to go and change the axis. And so the way I can do that is if you go in this inspector under app.UIAxes, you can actually look and try to find what classes you can basically pull out of that object. And so in this case, I want to pull out the axes class xtick, or I want to do actually xlim. I don't even know if it's in here, but it might be in grid. It's not, but I know it's there because remember when we looked at the axes properties in MATLAB before, there's one called xlim. And so unfortunately that's not in here, so it's kind of not proving my point. But if I wanted to change the ticks, I could do that. I could go in and change those as well. I'm not going to mess with that because those are going to change depending on how you want to plot and things. But what I can do instead is I can just say, all right, it's not in here, but I think it's there. So if I do app.UIAxes and so this actually gives me an entire list of all of the classes I can pull out of that and set equal to values. And so in this case, let's see if xlim is one of them. Look, it is. So this is going to work just like the xlim did in my axes properties. Is I just want to give it a minimum and a maximum. The maximum in this case being 2 times the period, because I'm only wanting to plot 2 times the period. And so what this will do is it'll plot it, and then it'll control that plot and make sure you're not plotting anywhere outside of the time vector, basically. So let's go ahead and plot this. Hit run. And so now let's use the same frequency, 3.14. Let's use let's make it go all the way up to 80 here, the amplitude, and hit plot. And so if you see, my maximum amplitude is 80. My minimum is basically 80, negative 80. See, it's negative 80, and the only the limits of the x-axis are 0 and 2 times the period. And so look, it actually worked. It did exactly what I wanted it to do. And so that is how you would go and add this plot. So what I want you to do, and this isn't actually quite yet going to be your in-class problem 2, but it's going to be the start of it. So maybe go ahead and get started on this, because you need to use this for in-class problem 2. Is I want you to make a GUI that plots the general form of the parabolic equation, right? The second order polynomial equation, ax squared plus bx plus c. And I want you to plot it based on inputs. And the inputs are going to be I want you to give A, B, and C, and I want to give it in two separate ways. Is A, B are going to be these edit boxes. C is going to be a slider between 0 and 10, and then when plot is pressed, it plots the parabola. And so go ahead and do that. You start working on that. Like I said, this is going to be the majority of the second problem. The second in-class problem is also going to I want you to include a radio button to select the color of the line. But I'm going to show you how to do that in the next video, so you don't have to worry about it too much. But I want you to go ahead and get started on that. If you do all of this, you're going to be 3/4 of the way there to finishing your in-class problem 2. So go ahead and get started on that so you have an idea of what we're doing. Just cement this concept a little bit further. And then the next video, I'll show you how to add that radio button.